You're listening to the DVM Podcast Empire.
Now with over 1 million downloads.
1 million downloads.
Find us online at DVMPE.com.
100% free.
1,000,000% fan.
And now,
Push the button.
Is it possible that we have permitted ideology, political and economic philosophies, and governmental policies to keep us from considering the very real, everyday problems of our people?
So what if my feelings are hurt? Does that give me the right to prevent others from expressing their opinions?
Wait a second, Doc! Are you telling me that this sucker is nuclear?
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button!
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button!
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button!
Mr. Anderson.
Don't push it!
Hey everybody, welcome back once again to the latest episode of Push the Button, your number one podcast about all things that get you hot. I am your host, David Vox Mullen, the man of many talents.
And I'm Mr. Anderson, your other host, a man of several, I guess, talents.
We are the men of many talents.
Yeah.
And let's see, we haven't recorded in a while, so the last thing we talked about was the marijuana legalization, and that got some interesting response from people.
Yeah.
A lot of people pretty much agreed with pretty much everything we said, which is interesting because we don't vote that way. But it was neat to talk about that sort of stuff. We had Patrick on who readily admitted his constant usage of marijuana. So thanks, Pat, for doing that. And so today we're going to try something a little new. We're gonna add a new segment, a news segment, so to speak. I don't know what we'll call it. We'll come up with something. Maybe we'll call it the "What the hell's going on this week." So the first topic we want to talk about is Ebola in the United States. First case contracted here in the United States. So apparently that's a thing now, that Ebola is in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
That is the thing.
It's interesting to me. It seems like every few months, so Ebola is big right now. The H1N1 virus was big for a while. The bird flu. It just seems like every 6 months there's a new.
Yeah, but Ebola, really? I mean, wasn't that like
wasn't it eradicated?
Like the Black Death plague? I mean, that was the one that the book The Hot Zone was about, wasn't it?
I am not familiar with the Hot Zone.
When I was in high school, I'm dating myself here now, in the 90s, early 90s. I believe that Ebola was like the Stephen King-esque Stand type disease that we were all, Walking Dead afraid of.
Yeah.
If you think about it, you got it, and you're going to die. It was this terrible, scary disease that, thank God it's over in Africa, because if it comes over here, it'll just wipe our country out and things like that. They made a movie, Outbreak, with Dustin Hoffman, loosely based on that book and on Ebola. And, it scared the crap out of all of us. So, but now it's the thing.
I actually contracted the Black Plague.
Did you?
Well,
that was the bubonic plague, wasn't it?
I was told that it was something very similar to the Black Plague. It was after I had I tore my lat when I first started at WWE, and I had surgery, and they went in and surgically repaired my lat. I tore it off the bone.
That's fun.
And yeah, always a good time. And basically 6 days later, I was laying on the couch and I started feeling sick, and I ended up with actually having a temperature of, it was way low. It was in the 70s or the 80s. I had a really low body temperature, and I was just shivering, and no matter what, my wife kept throwing comforters into the dryer and heating them up and wrapping me up in them. And at one point, she had her whole body wrapped around me, and I was just literally shaking so hard that it hurt. And I went in, and her grandfather had died a year or two before from a staph infection. So we had gone into the hospital a couple days earlier, and she had suggested at that point, she's like, please take a blood sample and test it for staph or any of those other kinds of like that. And luckily, the day that my temperature dropped so low, we went back into the hospital, and as we were waiting, they came down with the results, and I had basically like staph, but it was they said it was gram-negative rods. Now, I'm not really familiar with that whole.
Yeah. All of our doctors who listen probably.
Yeah, different diseases and stuff, and basically, so I was in the hospital for 7 days before my fever broke. I mean, I was on kinds of antibiotics. Basically, at one point, I remember looking at her and thinking, this might be it. I might be checking out here.
Yeah, I can imagine how
it's a weird feeling. So anyway, I didn't mean to jump off on that, but
no, it still applies.
Experience with that.
Yeah, it still applies. That's crazy. So Ebola. Now we've had 2 doctors who were in Africa who we brought back to the States a couple months ago, and we basically cured them. So I think it's implied that the United States has the secret weapon against Ebola. But now it's here in the U.S. I think it's in Dallas, if I'm correct. It's somewhere in Texas, which I'm sure they'll love that down there. And I'm not sure what to think about it, man. I'm a little uncomfortable with it. I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm not like a germaphobe, but when it comes to something that we were, brainwashed as being this big deadly thing, it's like, really? Is that what we want?
Right.
Kills you in 2 or 3 days, I mean, it's like, really? So, I don't know. We do have the cure for it.
We
have something. I don't know if it's the cure or if it's just good treatment to get you through it. The ability to stay alive through it, I suppose. But from what I understand, old people and kids are still, skull and crossbones if they get it. So.
Oof. Which is scary to me, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I'm not happy about it. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens.
I spoke to my aunt last night, who's a nurse, and she said that there's some respiratory disease going around.
There is an unknown disease that's going on right now. It's already claimed the lives of, I think it's 10 or 11 young people in the last 2 weeks. And I just saw it on the news this morning. They don't have a name for it yet. They don't know what it is, but it's something.
Wow.
So I'm sure more to come on that one. So let's move on. We were in Texas. Now we're moving over to Oklahoma. So we have the Oklahoma beheading. Originally, the reports that came out, I'm sure you heard about it, but originally reports came out was that it was a disgruntled employee. It was, a case of workplace violence is what everybody was saying. Looking over the fact that this gentleman was a Muslim and that he was in support of ISIS and things like that online. But now, today, they're saying that he wasn't a disgruntled, he wasn't fired per se. Everybody said he was fired and whatnot. Today it comes out that he wasn't fired. He was actually suspended for saying publicly that he hated white people. They suspended him from his job. And it is no longer being considered workplace violence.
Really?
It is now considered possibility of terrorism. Now, here's the thing that caught me off guard. They mentioned on the news this morning that there is no terrorism statute in the state of Oklahoma. That's kind of weird, considering Oklahoma. Right? I mean, how do they not have terrorism?
What's the difference between terrorism and any other crime?
Well, it goes right to federal, as opposed to state being able to pursue it as terrorist acts.
Gotcha. It becomes a federal crime. So.
Right. Which, I mean, granted, I understand the need for that, but at the same time, it's like after the Oklahoma City bombing, how do you not have something in place?
Right.
So that's what's going on. And speaking of not having something in place, in Chicago, we had, I don't know if you caught it, but we had basically an air traffic control relay station in Aurora, Illinois, was basically set fire by a disgruntled employee.
Was that workplace violence?
Well, I guess it was self, because I guess he was committing suicide while he was doing it. And from what I understand, when the authorities broke in and caught him, he was literally in
immolation?
Mid-immolation, yeah.
Was he set himself on fire?
He was setting. I don't know if he was setting himself on fire, but I think he had a knife to his throat or something. I'm not quite sure the specifics yet. It's still kind of sketchy. But what happened was it ended up grounding O'Hare and Midway traffic. In fact, they're not to this day. This was a couple of days ago. I think it was Fridays when it happened. They're still not at full capacity yet. And what bothers me is it's Chicago. How do you not have a backup in place for something like that? You know,
well, this has sort of infuriated me about anytime I have to travel through Chicago, I start to sort of get a little nervous because it seems that if anything goes wrong in Chicago, or if anything goes wrong anywhere, somehow Chicago ends up getting backed up and almost
right. Well, because Chicago is like a major hub for the entire country.
Right. Every time I go through Chicago, I end up getting every time my father-in-law travels a lot for work, and almost every time he travels through Chicago, he gets delayed significantly.
You know, it's funny. Growing up here, I've never had a delay in my life until the very last time my wife and I went to Vegas last spring. And, we had like a 3-hour delay, and boy, was she pissed. I won't mention the airline, but it was, it's one of those things. But yeah, so it's funny. My uncle was actually flying in from North Carolina on Friday, right as that all went down. So he was delayed a couple hours too, just getting to land. And, so he's actually here in Chicago. He was actually supposed to leave tomorrow, and I don't know if he's even going to be able to get out yet. They're going to try to find out. So it's one of those things where, you know, this dude. Oh, and this is the kicker. This guy was upset because he was given I don't know if it was a promotion or a lateral promotion, but he was being moved from Chicago to Hawaii, and he was pissed about that. Really? I mean, I can understand being sent to Oklahoma. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, Oklahoma. But Hawaii? I mean, my gosh, send me. You know?
Oy vey. Well, and here, you know, this sort of points to a big problem that I've had with TSA and security in general, because this is a security issue, obviously. That everything that we do in this country when it comes to airport security, airline security, is always reactive, never proactive. When when they found out that people were using liquid explosives, or that was a possibility, now we can't have liquids on the plane. When somebody tried blowing up a plane with their shoes, now we have to take our shoes off. But you never see any proactive sort of measures being taken. And they're never, you know, our government uses some of the creative minds, the writers out there, to sort of gameplay and come up with like different scenarios, and they try to thwart those scenarios before they ever occur.
Right.
Whereas it seems like our TSA just, well, you know, now if somebody, who knows what the next thing is that somebody's going to try to pass through security.
You know what? And that's kind of the point that I've been trying to make with some people when I've been getting in these discussions about it, is that you cannot stop the will of another human being. Period. I mean, we talk about the gun control and we talk about, you know, the drug war. You cannot stop the will of another person. If somebody has it in their mind made up that this is what they're planning to do, no amount of legislation or banning or prohibition is going to stop them from acquiring whatever they want to do to service their own will. Whether that's someone, you know, God forbid, walking into a daycare and lighting it up, or flying a plane into a public building in the middle of a populated city. I mean, you cannot stop the will of mankind. And I think there's this real thin veil line that we have of civility, that some of these crazy people just kind of say, no, I'm taking the veil off, I'm going to do what I want. And I think there's a lot to dig into there with that. And if we ever get into a psychology episode, we'll definitely talk about that stuff. But keeping the news going, talking about lack of security, dude jumps over the fence at the White House.
Yeah.
With a knife.
Well,
while the Secret Service is standing there.
In fairness, I believe he ditched the weapons and things that he had. I don't think that he had any intentions of harming anyone. I think it was a pocket knife that he had on him. I mean,
of course, the media probably is going to trump up whatever it was, but realistically, this is a dude hops the fence at the White House, gets across the lawn, gets into the building and into the I believe it was the East Wing. He gets into the building. Now, I'm not one for just murder, but when you break the barrier of the United States president's home, I'm thinking you could probably get shot.
You're probably in a pretty good position to have that happen to you. But I do think that I guess I do commend those officers for using that restraint and just tackling them, because that obviously was effective. And he really, when you look at what he had on him, he really didn't have the means of carrying out anything serious.
Sure. Okay. Now, is this the third time since Obama's presidency that someone has basically snuck in?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. Well, and then there were, I guess, gunshots fired.
Oh, that's right.
Last year they just had I think the House just had a committee hearing on it had to do with these recent break-ins.
Yeah.
But they also brought up the fact that there were gunshots fired, and the Secret Service played it off like it was a car backfiring or something like that. And,
right.
A White House staffer, a cleaning lady, apparently found some broken glass the next day.
Wow.
And this, to me, points to a bigger problem within the Secret Service, and it's sort of a cry for help, I think. If you recall, the Secret Service, the Beast, the car that the president drives around in, bottomed out somewhere and got hung up on an approach in a driveway about 2 or 3 years ago. Obviously, they hadn't scouted the route. I mean, the car was literally stopped and couldn't move because it had bottomed out and, couldn't go anywhere.
That's a no-no.
You have the incident down in, was it Brazil, where the Secret Service agents were caught hiring prostitutes.
Yeah.
You've got, there are, not every single one of them is coming to the top of my head, but it seems to me that there have been at least 10 incidents in the last 7 years that have occurred.
Yeah.
Because the Secret Service didn't do their jobs.
Well, and speaking of which, the last thing on the news that we'll talk about, and this was something that literally has been coming out over the newswire today, that apparently the president was on a closed elevator with a gentleman who was an ex-convict who had a gun in his pocket, and he was taking pictures of the president, and the Secret Service was basically just telling him, hey, stop taking pictures. Now, had he stopped taking pictures, they probably would have let it go. But because he continued, then they arrested him, and then they found that he was an ex-con and he had a gun, and it was like, what the hell?
First of all, what an idiot for continuing to take pictures, knowing that you've got a weapon on you, knowing that you're in the presence of the Secret Service.
Yeah.
They're probably going to check you out.
How about don't put my president in the United... I mean, whether I like the guy's politics or not, he's still the president of the United States, Don't put my country's president on an elevator with any civilian.
Right.
I mean,
well, and getting back to what I was saying earlier about that bigger problem, and the bigger problem, I think, is that the Secret Service personnel are understaffed, overworked, and probably underpaid, and they're also ill-equipped. I read a book.
You did?
I did. Would you believe that I actually read a book?
Read a freaking book.
I took time out of my busy schedule to read a freaking book. And it was in the President's Secret Service or something like that. It was about the Secret Service, and basically they said that the weapons they use are outdated. The conditions under which they perform are Machiavellian, and they just get assigned to, there are certain circumstances where, like, somebody has a family and there are, say, 2 Secret Service agents up for this position, and they'll give the position that requires the Secret Service agent to move away from friends and family when another Secret Service agent is perfectly willing and able to take that position, and they just do it willy-nilly. These people don't get vacations, or their vacations are very sparse. This, to me, is just amazing. Is an amazing revelation that you would think that this would be the most well-equipped fighting force that we have in this country to protect that man, and it's just not.
Yeah,
and of course that's one person's opinion.
Sure.
But when you look at all these problems that have occurred over the last couple of years, it's sort of...
Well, you can judge the opinion by the facts, and the facts are what's coming out of the news, like you said, the last 7 years. Now, has it, I mean, with the exception of, the Lincoln assassination and the Kennedy assassination, has it ever been that bad? You know what I mean? Like, let's just say since the 70s on. Has it ever been that lax in security?
Not that I'm aware of, and that may have something to do with the fact that the information is at the tip of our fingers, and our fingertips all the time.
Okay.
Maybe the better job of covering this stuff up in the past. I don't know. That's possible.
Sure.
But I've never heard of. It seems like every few months there's an incident.
Yeah.
Involving the Secret Service.
I will definitely say the world appears to be waking up. With that information age, I think comes with a mass awakening, as evident as these countries in the Middle East, or even in Asia, like in Hong Kong, where they're rising up now again, 25 years later, because they want democracy and because they can get on their Twitter and they can get on their Facebook and they can see what is going on in the rest of the world, and they're like, hey, we don't like this stuff. I mean, that's what's up. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back right after this.
David Vox Mullen here to tell you all about what's new this fall on the DVM Podcast Empire. The new TV season is here, and we've got a great lineup for you. New shows like Gotham, The Flash, Forever, iZombie, Better Call Saul, Constantine, The Messengers, and Wayward Pines. We've also got new DVMPE original shows like Movie Mojo Monthly, Loot the Room, TV Resurrection, The Comic Book Podcast, Fangirl Zone, Push the Button, and The Windy City Rejects. And yes, all of your favorites are coming back as well, like the Podcast of Interest, Arrowcast, American Horror Cast, The New Who Podcast, Game of Thrones, Grimm, Once Upon a Time, The Walking Dead, and so much more. Of course, absolutely none of this would be possible without the support of our listeners just like you. So please consider your continuation of support by telling all of your friends about us, shopping online through our Amazon portals, or simply by donating directly at DVMPE.com. The DVM Podcast Empire. We don't just watch TV, we live it.
And we're back, and today we are going to be talking about something that is just as much a hot-button issue as today as it was since the dawn of mankind. That's right, we're talking about the oldest profession in the world, prostitution. And of course, as always, when we talk about something of that nature, two guys cannot be taken seriously. So we brought back a friend of the show, Cheryl. Cheryl, how are you?
I am fantastic and happy to be here.
It's so good to have you back. And this is going to be fun because I don't know where Cheryl's stance is on the issue. I don't know where Ken's stance is. They don't know where mine is. So the question of the day is, should prostitution be legal in the United States of America? And there are definitely a lot of pros and cons, arguably. Let's ask you, Cheryl, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that prostitution should be legal.
Okay.
However, it should be regulated.
Okay, because it is currently not.
Correct.
Okay. Ken, what about you?
I agree wholeheartedly. I feel that it should be regulated, just like any other industry, just like any other business. And, in the places where it is legal, or the place where it's legal, in this country at least, things seem to be going pretty well.
It's quite successful.
Well, I will definitely say that morally I have an issue with just the concept of prostitution. But this episode's going to suck because I think it should be legalized as well. So we're all in agreement.
Maybe we'll just debate how it should be. How it should be regulated.
Well, I mean, let's give credit to let's give credence to people who do not want prostitution. Cecilia Hoffman, Secretary of the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women, Asia Pacific, wrote in August 1997 the paper "Sex from Human Intimacy to Sexual Labor, or Is Prostitution a Human Right?" Published on their website. She says, prostitution violates the right to physical and moral integrity by the alienation of women's sexuality that is appropriated, debased, and reduced to a commodity to be bought and sold. It violates the prohibition of torture and of cruel, inhuman, and or degrading treatment or punishment because clients' acts and practices of sexual entertainment and or pornography are acts of power and violence over the female body. Hold on, there's two more phrases. It violates the right to liberty and security, and the prohibition of slavery, of forced labor, and of trafficking in persons because millions of women and girls all over the world are held in sexual slavery to meet the demand of even more millions of male buyers of sex and to generate profits for the capitalists of sex. It violates the right to enjoy the highest standard of physical and mental health because violence, disease, unwanted pregnancies, unsafe abortions, and AIDS stalk present, constant, and grave risks for women and girls in prostitution and militating against a healthy sense and of relationship with their own bodies. Now, before we go any further, this was written in 1997. As a man, I'm offended because there are male prostitutes.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
I was too.
So, okay.
And then I was thinking, I don't know why, because I can go to any bar, just about in any place.
Yeah, we won't get into that one today. We will not get into that one today. Actually, we might. Okay, so, because I'm angry.
Well,
no, I'm just...
Can we peel that up layer by layer and start at the top there?
Because one of the first things I was thinking of, this seems to be more geared towards human trafficking.
Exactly. Clearly a worldwide problem.
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, Cheryl, I think that answer right there says a lot. It's a worldwide problem. Whether or not it's something that we can handle here in the United States, it's happening. Well, human trafficking is happening, and it's a terrible, terrible thing, and we do not support it in any way. So let's make that clear. But prostitution, I don't think, while it is human trafficking for a certain percentage of people, there are people who willingly, 100% head first into that profession of their own free will.
Well,
if a woman chooses to sell herself, who am I to tell her not to?
The United States government.
If she's of age to do that, there's no feminist point of view that I have that can tell a woman that she can't make that choice.
And I can just imagine Ken waving his arms back and forth. So what were you going to say, Ken?
Well, I'm just going to say, one can pay you for the use of your brain, as a philosopher, or, in the case of Lawrence Krauss, where he just basically thinks about physics and astrophysics and things like that. They can pay you for the use of your eyes as a security officer to sit and watch a monitor. They can pay you to use your mouth and radio and voiceover, television, etc. Your athletic ability to throw a freaking ball through a hoop.
Ken, we pay you to fall down.
to take suplexes off the top rope or to fall through tables.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To use your body.
To pound a football through defenders and into an end zone, as witnessed by the Chicago Bears at the hands of the Packers.
Damn!
Almost got off the recording without you making a comment. And dang it.
Below the belt.
I had to go there. But if you try to use your penis or your vagina to do these things, then you're in big trouble, mister or missy. I mean, because, that's naughty.
Yeah.
And those are the naughty parts.
And
this is
gonna go with this.
Sex is wrong. Sex is immoral unless you're, and I know this is going to sound very offensive to some, and I don't know.
That's why we do this show.
Any other way to put it, but sex is wrong unless your pastor has said some magic words and you've performed some rituals in front of your friends and God.
Does not necessarily have to be a pastor. There are civil things at the courthouse and things like that.
You know what I'm saying.
No, I know where you're going, but I also want to point that out that I think it's still, even if you take the religion out of the whole marriage equation, the concept of marriage, I think, is still basing back to biblical or religious undertones. Whether or not you do it in a court of law, the concept of, I want to wait till I get married is usually something that's passed down generation to generation.
Yes.
That I would assume dates back to a religious belief. Although, I'm sure and again, it's no joke, it is the oldest profession in the world. So we have been doing this dance, no pun intended, since as far back as we can remember.
The horizontal hokey pokey.
The horizontal dance of love and finance. Okay, so here's the thing. And I don't want to sound like a sexist bastard, so this is why Cheryl's here to kind of mediate. Mm-hmm. But I'm a dude, last I checked.
Yeah.
When I was in the world trying to close a deal, so to speak, it was not always the easiest of tasks, as I'm sure Ken could attest as well. Maybe not. Maybe it was always easy for Ken. I don't know.
Negative.
But,
I find it so hard to believe from both of you.
Thank you. You're too kind. And we're both married now, so it doesn't matter. So
we paid her to say that. And that's okay.
No offense to either of your wives.
Okay, but no. You can make offense to my wife. I love her, but I paid. I definitely paid. In some way, shape, or form, I've paid. And that's kind of the point I'm making is maybe not with cash, but a guy takes a girl out, spends money on dinner, dancing, movie. Not to say that there's an expectation, because that would be wrong. But usually a girl, for the most part, unless I'm wrong, there is a level of certain things need to be established first. That's not yes, there's a percentage of girls who are like, I don't care, I want it, I'm going to get it, whatever. But for the most part, a girl, from what I understand, man, I'm just hearing how terrible I sound.
You are just such a chauvinist pig.
But there's things that are traded for sex,
dinner,
anything,
movie.
They're just not labeled necessarily as a cash transaction.
Damn it, guys! I'm married and I still have to trade things for sex. I have to do the dishes. I have to take the trash out. I mean, I'm working.
And still, when all those things are traded,
you're taking.
You still get denied.
But when you're talking about going out and dinner and dancing, you're talking about a very relationship-like situation. Most men that frequent prostitutes go to prostitutes because they want to have sex with no strings and just pay them to go away afterwards.
Some do. I've had sexual relations where I was apparently so bad that they just wanted to go away. But it's funny because it's true. But now the flip side of the coin, Cheryl, and I'm sure don't you dare lie. You even joked about it earlier on. At any point in time, if you said, you know what, I think I'd like to have sex tonight, all you'd have to do is go into any establishment, take your pick of the litter, and go, you. Mm-hmm. And
I live in a very sexual, microcosm of the world, and yet that would not be a problem at all if that's what I wanted.
And so, to me, there's a bit of bias there. Nothing personal, but I think there's a bit of bias there. I think women have learned years ago that, hey, when I want something or if they want something, the sex can be used as a manipulation. Whether or not people do it all the time, I don't know, but you can't deny that is something that is definitely considered by both parties.
I would agree. People, especially, I find it more in marriage. The sex is more of a brokerable commodity kind of a thing than when in my single days or in my dating days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because, the commitment wasn't there. And now it's kind of like, hey, I promised, so, now I don't have to have sex. I don't know.
And I'm not sure necessarily what all of our age kind of ranges are between the three of us, but the youngsters now view sex completely differently. They hook up left and right. They have oral, different sexual activities. They just turn and walk away when they're done. There's no relationship. There's no expectation of anything.
I don't think that's really
when I was younger.
I mean, they were doing that in the 60s. I mean, I don't think that's terribly different.
I guess maybe I was just a different teenager than.
Maybe you were just a very good girl when you were younger.
No, I'm not a very good girl, but I had expectations.
She had standards, damn it.
I had daddy issues and I had relationship expectations and stuff. It wasn't just a put me on the L and send me home kind of a thing.
Right. So, okay. But again, the question of the day is, should it be legalized? Now, you mentioned something about, who are you to say what somebody can do with their body? Mm-hmm. While that concept is admirable, and that's often been brought up in the past with many things, whether it's abortion or birth control. In fact, the last time you were on the show with us, we talked about that stuff. And, I'm constantly hearing that, nobody can tell me what to do with my body, especially when it comes to governmental integration. Here's what I think is interesting. The more I've thought about that, try driving your car naked and see how far you get. Because, the government can tell you what you can and can't do with your body.
That actually sounds like a pretty good idea. I might try that this afternoon.
Please do it in Minnesota.
I don't want to shock and offend anyone, but I've actually done that.
Okay, but the point I'm making is, had you been pulled over, mm-hmm. you would be ticketed and or arrested for indecent exposure. Yeah. It is a law. You don't have 100% control of your body in the United States. If I want to walk into a convenience store, pull out a knife and slit my arm, I would be arrested. And I can't say the government has no right to tell me what I can and can't do with my body. There is a level of I'm not defending pro-life or pro-choice. I'm just saying it's an interesting argument that I've heard for years, and just recently I've kind of went, wait a minute, we don't have control over our bodies. So that really does kind of get into the, how much regulation does the government have, or should they have? If we truly want to fight for complete control of our bodies, that's a different argument. And I'm all for that argument. If I want to ride down the street naked and not be accosted or molested, no pun intended, I meant that in the constitutional sense, then I should be able to do it. Let me rephrase that, because I know how my body looks. I shouldn't be able to do that, but I should have the right to do it. If that makes sense. Nobody wants to see me naked. But yeah, so I don't know how strong who am I to say what somebody could do with their body defense really is.
But the thing is that when you're talking about riding your bike naked down the street, you are obviously going to pass by children at some point.
So is that a moral issue then, Ken?
Well, no, but
You're infringing on other people's rights not to have to see that.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're forcing other people to, if it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg nor, makes my eyeballs want to burst in my head.
So if it's touching you, that's offensive. If it's in your eyesight, it's offensive. What if it's in your knowledge? Like, what if you know that behind that door, prostitution is going on?
No.
So as long as you can't see it, it's okay. And I'm only playing devil's advocate just for the sake of conversation.
As long as I can't see it.
You said, if people are screwed in the back of a Volkswagen, which is really uncomfortable, I would imagine. They get arrested.
Right.
Because children could walk by.
Right.
Well, a child could accidentally walk into a brothel.
Wow.
Sure. No.
Wow.
Hey, you know what? In Chicago, I happen to know of a place that I'm not going to mention it because I'm not going to be the one who gets somebody arrested and then they come after me with a shotgun. But there is an establishment that is well known in the area where it is absolutely prostitution going on and probably some drugs. And it's in a strip mall.
Really?
Absolutely. And if the people want to investigate, it's in the town of Glendale Heights, Illinois. Anyway, if they wanted to, a child could, any time of the day or evening could be walking around, and by child, I could just mean anybody under 18 is still considered a minor. So, a 16-year-old kid.
A horny little 16-year-old that kind of knows their reputation of that doorway in Glendale.
Or maybe doesn't. Maybe he gets lost and needs to ask somebody for directions, so walks into an establishment where there's people, pounding away. Is that... You know what I mean?
You're kind of crossing sex club and prostitution ring and drugs kind of all together.
Well, I'm just saying I know for a fact that there's things going on there because I've been in there. But anyway, not that I purchased anything because that
you wandered in there to use the payphone.
It's actually when I was in a rock band, we had a practice facility that was in the same strip mall, and we were a bunch of dumb, early 20s, goofing around, and we checked that out and saw what was going on in there. But again, the point I think I was making, just like I said, for devil's advocate's sake, there's always going to be a prospect of could.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now if that business were regulated, there would be steps in place to ensure that children wouldn't wander in.
Ah, okay.
I think of the very publicized, televised bunny ranch out in Nevada where you have to get buzzed in and, there's just a bunch of girls in the lobby. They come running. Someone who is able to break through that door security would not get an eyeful of anything. There's still several processes that take place before there's the actual act or the actual witnessing of sex.
Okay. So... Sorry, I'm just thinking of the bunny ranch now.
I know. I love the bunny ranch.
But, okay, so do we see a possibility? Well, and Ken, you mentioned it earlier. I mean, what do we know about the revenue that's pulled in from that in Nevada? Is it Nevada itself is making money hand over fist.
That I do not know. Yeah, literally.
Well, I just mean with Las Vegas and Reno, and just with the fact that gambling is legalized and all the money that's poured into gaming and tourism and prostitution. I'm only aware of the Bunny Ranch. Are there multiple brothels in Nevada? I'm assuming so.
I believe so, and I believe there's only one county where it's legal, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the United States, and it's not in Las Vegas. Las Vegas is actually illegal. Prostitution is illegal.
Right. No, but I just mean the state as a whole, with its tax revenue, is probably pulling in a fair amount.
I actually don't have a number on that.
Damn it, Ken.
Damn it. I just dropped the ball.
I think we need to have research funding, so we need to go out there and check it out. And no, I'm just kidding. Okay, so so the consensus is realistically maybe let the states decide. That's kind of like the blanket safe way to answer that stuff, right? Like, let the states decide.
I get in trouble for this all the time when I have discussions with my husband because for as much as a liberal as I am, I really would like the federal government to decide some things.
That sounds liberal.
Well, yeah, in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. But I think for something like that, it does need to be a federal mandate. If we're going to have protected sex workers, with regulations, age restrictions, drug testing, whatever it is, the provisions that we think should be put in place before we grant someone the right or ability or.
When you say age restriction, do you mean minimum age or like after 65 you should?
Minimum age.
Sorry, honey, you're 65 next year. You can't be prostituting anymore.
But what would the minimum age even be? Because aren't consent laws in some places are down to 16?
Wow, I don't know.
Or are they not? I thought I
have no
idea. I
didn't
have a lot of time to research, but I thought.
Considering my stepdaughter's 17, I would say at least 30.
Yeah, 35.
35. If you're old enough to run for president, you're old enough to purchase prostitution. No, and we joke around, but the simple fact of the matter is it's happening anyway, and it's going to continue to happen.
Well, that's the thing. I'd like to touch on the cons that are given for this. That it promotes violence, as Cecilia Hoffman stated in her piece, that it violates the prohibition of torture and of cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, because clients' acts and practices of sexual entertainment and pornography are acts of power and violence over the female body. What has prohibition done to the violence level surrounding the drug trade? Has it increased or decreased?
Oh, it's certainly increased. I mean, there's more drug-related deaths and killings, which are the same thing, and
because it's got to be secret.
But it was the same thing when the prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s. I mean, that's when our mobsters became celebrities because they were pushing booze.
What has the prohibition of weapons done? Has it?
It's gotten really fast and furious. But
yeah.
You prohibit weapons, and it's a simple fact that bad guys don't follow the rules. So the only people that are ensured that they will not have weapons are law-abiding citizens.
It's that veil of civility that I mentioned earlier. It's if somebody has the will to do this, they're going to do it. The only thing that changes it is that whether or not the government says it's okay or not.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think, I mean, again, I don't agree with prostitution because I don't like having to pay for it. but on a political aspect, which I am capable of separating my integrity and moral opposition from my political support. Again, there's two major issues for me. One, I think our police force could be using their time far better than going after people who just want to have sex. Mm-hmm. And two, I think, like you said, a regulated industry, a maybe more accessible industry, a more safer, cleaner industry would then undercut all of the ones who would be terrible anyway. I mean, if I could go to a institution to pay for sex where I don't have a concern because everybody's healthy, everybody's clean, there's no chance of getting a disease, there's no chance of, of pregnancy or, like whatever. Mm-hmm. I would think that's a safer decision than somebody in an alley, behind the Quickie Mart for a Quickie Mart.
Behind the dumpster.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the only thing that concerns me is that, and again, my brain's already answering myself, but I'll say it though. The only thing that concerned me was that even if you had these, regulations and health protections and all these things, people are still in moments of desperation, still going to do behind the dumpster, of the Quickie Mart. But again, the problem is they were going to do it anyway, so it doesn't change anything.
No, I agree. Nothing scares me more than thinking about a little 12-year-old girl strung out, being pimped out by, her brother's friend, pimp who beats her. I mean, it's a terrible, terrible story.
And why do we think that's happening? Is it because there is a lack of industry there? There's a lack of availability? Or is it there's sick people out there who specifically required that request? Or is it both?
I think it's both. I mean, when you're talking about 12-year-old girls, like the very young girls, I mean, clearly there's a
Yeah. No, absolutely.
pedophilia issue.
Yeah.
But, to the drug use and the beating, like that's what I would like to get rid of when you hear the word prostitution. There can be, mature, educated women that, choose to make their living that way.
And again, does the legalization of such an industry stop that?
I don't necessarily think that legalizing prostitution for adults will curtail this problem of trafficking children, so to speak. Because, look, I don't mean to sound insensitive here, because one child that is affected by this is far too many.
Sure.
But how big is the problem actually? Because I can't, imagine that there are too many people out there that are looking.
It's pretty big. It's pretty big.
Satisfy themselves by, having sex with a 12-year-old.
Well, again,
I think worldwide it's a bigger issue than it is here.
They're
with
kidnapping people here and shipping them out of the country.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's big enough. I mean, it's definitely big enough that there are multiple charitable organizations who are trying to shed light on it. Is an organization that specifically tries to combat human trafficking and things like that. And the numbers that they post are huge. That it's happening on far more than anybody's willing to talk about on the media or anything like that.
But I feel that is a completely separate issue. The difference between Cheryl, if you want to sell your services, or if I choose to sell my services to females, to other consenting adults, I don't view that as in any way similar to the problem of kidnapping children and forcing them into these, sexual situations. I just... The fact that the act of sex is involved, I guess, is what links the two together. But I see them as two completely separate issues.
I wonder what the statistics are on prostitution in the United States. What the average age of the prostitutes are. Because when I see the Bunny Ranch, and I think about it from a very logical feminist point of view, I'm thinking about women who are 18 or older. And I'm not sure what the actual demographic is, because when I think in my mind, what I've heard or what I've seen in the media about prostitution, it's always much younger girls.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where the demand is, and I'm not sure what the purchaser's responsibility is in all of this, except to not be a pedophile.
Right. And I guess in that situation, there are circumstances where a girl who is 16 years old can pass as a 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20, whatever. And so in that situation, yes. But I would think that regulations put in place would curtail that, because if I'm a guy who wants to have sex with somebody with no strings attached, and there's two options. I can go to the person on the street who is not regulated at all in any way, shape, or form, or I can go to this place where I'm relatively certain of its safety, of its cleanliness, of its discreet nature. Which one are you gonna choose more often?
It kind of depends on what the price point difference is.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because, cigarettes are legal, but mobsters were making money hand over fist by stealing cartons of cigarettes and selling them for a fraction of the cost.
Right.
But they were still cigarettes. I mean, I don't know how that would work. I mean, obviously you'd have a lot of shady people probably running the industry at that point. But again, you can't really get away from it because it is the oldest profession in the world.
Do you think that legalizing it would make it a more popular alternative? Do you think there's a real fun factor to being a John? Or
I think it may lessen the taboo on it.
Mm-hmm.
Not completely. I mean, people still say that smoking is bad. Ken, I know you do. People would say that drinking is bad. There's millions of reasons why it is. And again, guns, same thing. I think it gets to that same thing that we always keep coming back to on this show, which is education.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all for legalization if we could also include education.
Yeah.
Proper education. What is safe, what is unsafe, what is dangerous, what is not dangerous. Things of that nature. And to learn how to respect it. I've never been given a class in school how to respect a firearm, but I did take a class in school to learn how to respect the moving vehicle, which is absolutely a weapon if used incorrectly.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
We have sex ed, but it's never really been taught as, this is something you respect. And again, maybe slightly. I don't want to knock all education, but when I was in school, it wasn't very much, this is something that needs to be understood and respected. It was more of my gym teacher was regulated to talk to me about sex, so I had to hear about it from him.
Yeah, I was never taught in school that my body was something to really be respected. It was this reproductive thing, and I was not to, antagonize the boys, and it was from a very male-dominated point of view. And I guess to some extent, I see legalized, regulated prostitution as actually being somewhat empowering the women.
It's I don't want to belittle that statement because I agree with it, but it's a choice. It's an optimistic view. Mm-hmm. You can choose to be optimistic about that. Like, there are exotic dancers who look at it and go, hey, this is great. I'm in control. There are some women who feel like it's a decrease in their integrity, or it's a lowering of their standards. I think it's in the eye of the beholder.
Which is why I also think that, and Cheryl, you touched on this earlier when you spoke about how kids look at sex nowadays. Our parents' generation, and it's still sort of held over in our generation, like, sex is dirty, sex is bad, sex is secret.
Mm-hmm. And no good comes from that.
I will. While I can say that that's not the case in my personal upbringing, I will say that I am aware that for the majority of the world, it is that case. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the Middle East, women have to cover up, and in America, it's, there's this constant. Well, sexism itself becomes this evil. I just heard a report yesterday on the radio about a woman put in England. She put a GoPro camera in her blouse and counted how many times men stared at her breasts. And it's like, so we're vilifying sexuality.
Well, come on, yeah.
No, but that's what I'm saying. We do have a tendency to vilify sexuality. So, and I can sense Cheryl itching now because it's a feminism there. But it's like, where's the line between, are we damaging our children by saying sex is bad and vilifying men for appreciating the human form, and vilifying women for appreciating the male form? What's okay and what's not okay? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, my husband, our family, we're very pro-sex, or,
yeah.
We don't shun sex at all. And I came from an environment that did. And I have 2 boys and I have a stepdaughter, and I look at all 3 of them, and I don't want any of them to be ashamed of their bodies. I don't want my stepdaughter to be taught in school how not to be raped. I think my boys should be taught how not to rape. It's just, the whole sexual culture it needs to be balanced on both sides. Women are not temptresses, and, men are just these stupid buffoons, and men are not all, totally dominant, and women are completely submissive. There's a balance, and you need to teach to both sides.
I've been with my fair share of women who completely were in control. And I could totally see where some people couldn't handle that. And I could see where some people really liked it. I didn't complain. But
in control, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
They initiated everything. It was not your atypical American pursuant of a relationship. A girl wants it. She's going to go get it. She's going to make it clear that she wants it. Nobody talks about, woman to man rape.
Well, God damn it. Where were these women when I was?
I know, right? No, the only time it's brought up is when it's a teacher and a student. But in reality,
and only when it's one way, right?
Exactly. So if
the other way is not so.
If it's a 29-year-old woman and a 26-year-old man, but maybe that man's a bit shy and she's dominating him, where's the line of, what this is okay, this is not okay? And I don't want to turn this into a rape episode, but there is an element of that. And I don't know if I agree with the vilification of sexuality. If you want the world to be pro-sexual health mentally, then I don't know if vilifying men is always the right answer.
It boils down to me that sex is one of our most basic animal instincts. And we are attracted to what we're attracted to.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And it doesn't mean that if you're attracted to something, you can have it.
Sure. I'd love a Lamborghini, but it's just not in the cards.
Right. But,
but I'd pay to do things to a Lamborghini. No, I'm just kidding.
Why does and that would be okay. That would actually be legal.
I don't know.
As long as nobody could see you
if I'm behind a closed
in your own garage.
Or hear you. I don't want to hear it either. Okay? What is going on in that garage over there?
Oh, man. That was wrong. I'm sorry.
But, why does the male peacock look the way that he does? To attract females for sex.
Because he's fabulous. No, I think you're right, Ken. I agree with you 100%. I think.
Why do women wear yoga pants at the gym?
Because they're comfortable, damn it.
And I do not. Cheryl, are you staring daggers into my soul right now?
No, I want to know what's up with yoga pants, because I felt like elastic waist pants are so not sexy, and then I had two guys tell me how much they freaking love seeing women in yoga pants. So I'm confused.
I freaking love yoga pants. Okay, I just have to.
To me, they're just stretchy sweatpants. I don't quite understand, but keep looking at my ass.
Full of crap, Cheryl. I'm calling bullshit right now. That's bullshit. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I spent $70 on my yoga pants.
Yeah. If you have to spend $70 on
yoga.
But see, that says something there.
I just wore pasties to the gym, and I don't know why everybody was looking at my boobs.
If yoga pants cost you $70, then economically that's a red flag, Cheryl. If Victoria's Secrets, who does not sponsor this show, sells them for $70, that means that women want them, and that means that women are aware of what's going on, and they want them. And you know what? Fine. I don't have a problem with it. If you want to feel sexy, God bless you. Go feel sexy.
Thank you.
Very well know what is visible and what is not visible when they're wearing them.
Yes, and you don't want me to wear them.
And I'm not in any way insinuating like, hey, she was asking for it. That's not what I mean.
No, yeah.
We display ourselves. Guys wear tank tops at the gym to impress women or impress guys or whatever, We dress ourselves up. We wear nice clothes to either look nice for our spouses or potential mates. It's just, this is an animal instinct, I think.
Yeah.
I know. David, you said something before. I'm just going to kind of dial it back here.
Okay.
You said something before about the idea that when you go to these brothels, if sex were legal, or if prostitution were legalized, that you could go to these brothels and know that you're not going to get a disease or whatever. And this is, I guess, one of the arguments that the naysayers have, is that, well, you're still promoting the possibility that you're going to spread AIDS because you can have an AIDS test and not test positive for up to 4 weeks or something like that. One of the
like 6 months. I mean, it's 6 months at minimum. I mean, and it is a concern, right? But
if somebody spits in your mouth, you could still have
it's a life concern.
You could still have the same thing.
But my thought process on that is that we take risks every day.
Yeah.
For all kinds of things.
I agree.
Every
time you get behind the wheel of a car,
we could reduce the speed limit to 3 miles an hour, and it would save all kinds of death in this country. But we weigh more. We weigh pros and cons. We know that some people are going to die because our speed limit is what it is.
Yeah.
We go parachuting. We go hang gliding. We do all kinds of these activities that we know there's a possibility that we might not end up on the right side of the grass after we participate in these things. We eat foods and consume other substances like cigarettes and alcohol that we know with certainty are bad for us.
And if we had a regulated industry with tests every 6 months or a year or whatever kind of we decided the standard would be, that's still probably better odds than you would get just out in the general population. Most people, outside of like truly sex positive people, don't get screened for things like that on a routine basis. So even if the test is 6 months old, it's still a test.
I think the government does a good job of protecting America's citizens from other citizens who want to cause harm.
Yeah.
But America has not ever been able to successfully protect America's citizens from their own free will.
Mm-hmm.
And a great case in point would be the big gulps in New York. We're gonna ban all soft drinks that are over so many 32 ounces or whatever. It didn't work.
It didn't one of the funniest things ever. I'll just buy 8, dumbass.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, you can't protect us from ourselves. You do a great job of protecting us from outside forces, domestic and abroad. But you can't stop an American citizen who was born and raised to be free, to have their own choices, to have their own will. Good or bad, you cannot protect us from ourselves. And I think every time they try, it ends up just not working.
Yeah, no amount of regulation. Prostitution is, for the most part, illegal in this country, punishable by extraordinary fines, imprisonment, being shunned by the community, and people still do it. There are countries where prostitution is punishable by death, and people still do it.
Yep. Man and woman will want what they want, and there's really nothing any government can do about it. So the only thing that we're left with is, like you said, if we legalize it, we can at least start to create guidelines to try and make things better.
Mm-hmm.
The legalization of tobacco hasn't changed the fact that they're still putting garbage in these cancer sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But the legalization of alcohol, there's, other than the fact that people get drunk and beat other people up, there's really no violence that occurs because,
not in direct result. No.
You can just go to the beer dealer on the corner.
Yeah.
Like
and I'm sure the percentage of intoxication related crimes, including DUIs and drunk driving and stuff like that, while it is great and everybody who has lost their life to such a thing, it is tragic and we respect that. But I think in relation to the percentage of the rest of the world who is partaking, I think it's not big enough to say we have a real problem here.
But if you don't have all this underground trafficking and all the violence associated with that, hey, somebody snitched that I have a case of vodka in my basement, so I'm going to have to go kill him now.
As a good little feminist, I just want to add, when you're talking about the dangers of drinking. When I talk to my boys and when I think about this myself, I try to tell them that really when, drinking's bad, not bad, but you need to be careful, kind of my whole mommy lecture. But, there's really two really negative consequences, drinking and driving, and there's rape. And I link them very closely in a lot of instances to excessive drinking, especially when you hear date rape, and now they got special nail polish and all kinds of stuff to try to defer date rape. And so I just want
special nail polish. What's that?
It changes colors.
It changes color if something's been put in your drink.
So you can put your finger in your drink, and if your nail polish changes colors, then you know that they put something in there.
That's phenomenal.
That's cool. I mean, that's cool. And I think that'll probably help.
It's sad, but it's cool.
No, that's what I mean. Like it's a good thing to have. But
I think all nail polishes should have that in it.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, like, why is it that you have? I had never heard of this.
It's new.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a teenage boy who came up with that, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah. Parents must be very proud.
A young man came up with that to try to help curb it, and it's great. But again, the issue of rape is terrible. The issue of human trafficking is deplorable, especially when you're dealing with minors and even younger. It's on a whole different level. But the actual process of a woman who is looking to trade sex for financial gain, it's going to happen regardless. If you at least legalizing it isn't the same as prohibiting it. Legalizing it at least allows for standards to be created. If it's prohibited, it's all off the table. And that causes the vacuum of crime and shady businesses and people who don't have these men and women's best interest in mind and things like that. And that
greatly increases the harm to women.
Absolutely. And there are male prostitutes. Let's get that out there. There are absolutely male prostitutes. And there have been many cases where male prostitutes have been raped, have been beaten, have been killed, have been drugged. So, yeah, I mean, it's not just a one-sided issue anymore. 20, 30 years ago, maybe, but not in America now. We live in a world where both men and women are just as susceptible to being a victim of a crime. And what?
I just watched an episode of Penn and Teller's Bullshit. Which it was on Showtime. I don't know if it's still on, but I watched it on Amazon Prime. And the episode was on prostitution, and there was a woman who was they put sunglasses on her and gave her a wig and, to try to hide her identity, I guess.
Right.
And she said that the one concern that she has is that she's alone in her home, and when these people come over to her house, when these men come over to her house, she has no idea what their intentions are, and she just has to hope for the best. And so far, she hasn't had any negative occurrences or dangerous occurrences, but that's not to say that it won't happen. Whereas she said if she was able to, if this industry were regulated, there would be, I guess, safeguards put into place that would ensure or at least give her more assurances to her safety.
That would stop a man from jumping over the fence of the
versus yeah, exactly. Nobody's going to hop the fence. There's cameras in the rooms. There's security guards
at the
watching.
bunny ranch, absolutely.
Yeah. And there are. If you go to the bunny ranch, there are cameras in the corner as you're having sex, and there's somebody watching to make sure that you're not beating the prostitute up.
Well, and if the ratings are
pay too.
I was going to say, if the ratings are as good as they are on HBO, they'll keep watching. So, all right, well, let's wrap this up, folks. The consensus, obviously, from the start was that yes, we think it should be legalized. No, human trafficking is bad, and we want that stopped. But it's not has nothing to do with legalization of prostitution. I think once we get people to, it's not that hard to separate your morality, your integrity, your personal opposition. Like I said, I have personal oppositions with it. doesn't even have to do with anything with my faith. It's just it's as a personal preference, I'm not down with it. But at the same time, I am also very aware of how my country runs. And I'm also aware of what we as Americans should have the right to do, and I think it should absolutely be legalized. And so we all three agree with that. So there you go. Prostitution should be legalized.
And with that being said, full disclosure, while I support the legalization of prostitution, I'm probably still going to have a problem if Prescott comes to me when she's 18 years old and says, if they legalize it, and Prescott, my daughter, says, Daddy, this is what I want to do with my life.
Sure.
I'm probably going to have a problem with that.
But it's your responsibility as a parent to educate her.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think it really comes down to it. Unfortunately, the government isn't educating enough. It does fall on the parent's responsibility, as it should, but it would be nice to have some help. That being said, cigarettes, I personally believe, are bad. But I would much rather them be legal than prohibited. Because if people are going to get killed in the street for cigarettes, it's going to make me really mad.
Yeah. Truth.
Yes.
So there you have it, folks. Prostitution all the way. Woohoo! Once again, we want to thank you, Cheryl, for joining us on the Push the Button podcast. You can email us. Tell us, what do you think? Do you think prostitution should be legalized? Should it not be legalized? Tell us why. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why we're right. We want to hear from you. Send us an email, pushthebuttonpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at pushbuttonpod. You can give us a 5-star review on iTunes. We'd love to hear from you. And, we'll catch you guys next time.
And David, I just want you to, yesterday we were talking on the phone, and you said something that your uncle told you about why he likes for people. He likes to argue with people. Why does he like to argue with people?
My uncle says he loves to argue with people simply for the sake that he wants them to prove him wrong, so that maybe he could actually learn something.
That is great. I think that is. I think everybody should think about that.
Yeah, I call
very admirable.
I call it playing devil's advocate, but I think there's a lot to it. And Ken, that's what you and I do. That's what you and I do all the time. And I've definitely learned. I have no problem admitting that I came into a couple of conversations in the past with my head on one way, and I walked out of it going, "Wow, that's a whole new way I hadn't thought about." And it has definitely changed some of my personal opinions on some political things and some religious things and all that. So it's definitely been an exciting journey, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. So, I'm not getting hot. Cheryl's not getting hot.
Well, I'm hot. What?
No, wait a minute. We have to explain to Cheryl. Cheryl, when we say hot, we don't mean like physically attractive. We're talking about level of madness, anger. Don't get hot. You get it?
I getcha.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll hear from you soon, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Can you push the button?
Bye.
Do not touch that button.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Mr. Anderson.
Don't push it.